Hi, it's Nancy welcoming you to Garden Scroll. Let's go into the garden and see if we can find any garden surprises. But first, you might want to put your boots on because you just never know what you might encounter out there. It's a hot old 4th day of August. I'm hearing that school is starting next week. So I hope it's an exciting time for the kids. I used to like school to a point, you know. It has its drawbacks like practically everything else, including gardening. And this is gardening's drawback, this terrible hot summer heat when so much of the garden succumbs and so many of the gardeners decide to give it up for the season 2. I can't blame them. But today also I wanted to take a look at my pots because I'm going to have to make some changes, not necessarily with these. These I just decided to put succulents in. They're under the eaves so they don't even get a lot of natural rain, and they just do well here because they don't take a lot of water. The succulents don't. So these are looking great. These are actually all sedum in these pots. This little pot, it is wide, deep, and it's a fairly good place to put things. So I would probably keep trying to fill this out with various little different things like the pretty bright coleuses. And this lovely licorice plant that splays out and just really fills out the whole pot. I always love to pair all these blue cask greenery with a Dusty Miller, which also is a blue cask greenery. And then back to over here where I was looking at this. This is another blue cask greenery. This pretty icicles plant. It's also in the licorice family. But as you can see, my petunias do not do well, and I will get out here when it's a little bit cooler. I won't do it in this heat, most likely. I may do a little of it, but not very much. And I will trim off this old stuff. And sometimes the petunias do show back up in the fall when the weather is cooler. So that will be great. But if it doesn't, I'm going to get rid of all this old ratty looking stuff. But it wasn't. But days ago I was taking pictures of this beautiful bright petunia. And only a month ago these were just beginning to come out of their scraggly look. And now they're actually looking great. I think I may want to put a slideshow on of all the different pots that I have so I can show you just the difference. Like this one is a sedum. It's looking great. And then the one in the back is actually not a succulent or a sedum, but it is a let me pull this back so you can kind of see it better. But this is a Sweet William, and it will just be a little green, but you can see that it has a old spent bloom there that I need to take off, of course. But I like to leave some and let them drop seed too. But it will look beautiful in the spring. Sometimes you don't mind having something that just looks green all the rest of the year, just so you can have it for its season when it will take center stage in the garden. However, look at this. I thought this would be a good way to keep my solidago, but it's not, because it's just drying up and looking terrible. I'm not sure what I'll do about that. I have actually enjoyed this little geranium in this hanging down pot, and in this particular place, it seems to be doing okay. It's not doing great by any means, but it still has some potential. I may leave it in this. I can't really quite imagine sedums in this one, but we'll see. Or a succulent of some sort. That may be in its future, but for now I think I will keep using the geranium in this pot. But what to put in what pot is the question, because earlier in the spring, or even the early summer actually, when this is just looking like it's dead, but of course it's not. It'll come back from the root, and it is a beautiful ballerina yarrow. It will be pretty in there, but right now it's not. It just needs to be cut back so you can maybe enjoy that little ferny foliage that it has. And there in the background, I love the diamond frost euphorbia, but it's not doing a great showing in this little pot, at least not yet. And I love the sedum here. This is a fairly large pot, and it just has done well for several years, so I probably definitely want to keep this. Definitely. I love this little sedum, and I have it in several places, and I would like to have it in several more because it just does well for me. Has that beautiful purplish color, has a beautiful little rosy pink bloom when it blooms. And this is another sedum back in this pot doing well. And this little pot did well until just a couple of weeks ago. And my little, I think I had both a calabachoa and a fanflower in here. I don't know if either one of them are left in here. The lantana is seeming to do fair. When the cooler weather gets here, though, there'll be so much to straighten up and fix up and clip out and try to replace. It's going to be another job, but it'll be a lot more fun to do that job when the weather is nice again. And if I remember right, sedum were my first choice for these little pots along the fence row. And it was a great idea, because you always want something excuse me, something that will actually work in the pot and not just die on you or look so scraggly that it's not something beautiful. It's just something you want to change. But this one is not the case. This is one of those great things that actually worked. There's also sedum in this little pot, and I'm going to get sedum started in more of those little pots that look terrible. Ooh, there's a mean little old grasshopper eating up things, but this little plant is going away anyway, so I guess he can have that one. And of course, this is not actually a sedum. This is a rose moss, one of the old nostalgia plants from my childhood. We could even afford rose moss, because if you just got a seed from somebody, it would do this and then spread and spread and keep spreading. We had an old cellar. The top of it was mounded, and the whole top of it was full of sedum. I don't suppose there's anything a whole lot more beautiful than it. All the people that could afford all the things that I'm actually trying to get in my garden and have gotten a lot of and looks so great, and I always wanted to do that, but ours, even just the few that you have, flowers are wonderful. I'm glad God made them. And there is a little coleus hidden in this pot. I may clip some of these Plectranthus off in the fall when they have a chance to re-root somewhere, and just kind of spruce this one up where you can see the coleus, where you'll have red and green at the same time. Oh, look what I found. I thought this was one of the Black-Eyed Susan vines, but I think this is a morning glory, and I try not to use many morning glories because they can get out of hand so quickly, but this was such a little beauty, and it's not showing up real well, but you can tell there's a little white edging around it just to show it off even more. I love container gardening. Where else can you just put so many colors and color combinations and textures of plants together, or just let one stand out on its own? This is not my favorite spot for the catmint, but it does work there. It comes back every year, and it's semi-pretty at least. But sometimes it is hard to decide what to put in a pot, and sometimes you fix up a beautiful little arrangement and it just doesn't do anything, or else it'll do something for a little while and then just fizzle out, and you just have this dead dry look, especially in this August heat. So I'm just trying to get a little idea, and maybe it'll help you with some ideas for your plants too, of what to do, what to change. This one looks like something that needs changing to me, although it does have a perennial in there, and I can trim this back and I think it will come back from the root. So that part is good, and it does look pretty earlier in the season, but it's not looking pretty now. That my little strawberry pyramid is finally beginning to fill out enough to at least partially hide the hose, the soaker hose that's in there, which is the reason it's even filling out any at all this season. And I need to either move this catmint or this little plant stand. It's a butterfly with 5 little pots in it that I have rose moss in, and these can actually look good even though they don't look so good right now, but they will eventually, at some point anyway in the season they will. But I need to move these two apart so that both of them can shine in a different place, I think. And then there's this tiny little pot. Look how small it is compared to other things. And it is small, very small, and yet it's definitely an eye catcher for beauty in this little pot. So it's hard to know what to do with things. I can't stay away from this polymer prints. If I'm this close to it, I certainly have to show it to you. It's looking so good. I hope I can save those through the winter, and not just this winter, but for many winters to come. And my beautiful bougainvillea has not bloomed this season, and it's probably my fault, because with all of our rains and the nutrition we were getting from them, I didn't go ahead and put some oh my goodness, I'm looking at this. I put this back up on here and it's already died off again. This makes the third time it's tried to start and then fizzled out, this little clematis. I hope it will get going again and stay going and looking good. And my idea for this brick actually wasn't so great after all, because the heaviness of it broke it off, and I've got it just sitting on this little bench for right now till I can figure out how to get it back up on its little shepherd's hook. But I was saying about the bougainvillea and any other plant, I did not go ahead and give them food this year so far, because after our rains came the heat, the extreme heat, and I didn't think that would probably be good for them to have something else put on them that might make them even hotter and work even harder. So they're looking good as far as the foliage, so I'm going to have to be happy with that. But oh, I love it when the bougainvilleas bloom and there's just a billow of beautiful pink, bright pink out here. And this little pot right here is definitely a candidate for change, because these little geraniums, even though they are beautiful, I think these look a lot like the ones our pastor's wife put at the church, which look so welcoming and beautiful. But these did not do that well for me either in the heat. And I put this little piece of sedum that broke off one of my others into this pot, and I will change this. I'm not even really sure that these are the pretty Stella d'Or daylilies. You can see this is some of the old blooms, and it probably won't bloom again now until spring. It could put on one when the weather gets cooler again, but I may want to keep this because this bottom part of it, but I definitely want to spruce up this top part a bit, or else just put something in it like the sedum that I expect to actually live. I don't know how well my little chrysanthemums will do in these pots as far as coming back, but I'm still hoping that they will. I think I had yellow chrysanthemums in both of these pots because I thought they would look beautiful with the blue, and I think this little yellow zinnia, I did not have some more starts of my chrysanthemum at the time, and even though I do have now, I have heard that it's best to start these in the spring so that they will have a better chance of having their root established enough to make it through the winter months. But you can tell how pretty the yellow and the blue go together with this little zinnia. This little pot today is looking so great, and I just looked at it a couple of days ago and I thought, I don't think it's going to make it. So you just never know. But this looks great this morning. I love this little sedum in this pot because it will, I think these, where it's kind of turning colors now, is probably just from the heat, but it will turn colors in the late season. It will be a beautiful orangey, pinky, yellow mixture of color, and so pretty. And I want to keep this bottom part of this two-tiered pot is a bog garden. I want to keep it like that so I can try to grow the Japanese iris that need to be in a bog garden. And that spike, look at that spike, it's going to town and looking great, but it doesn't show off very well because the rest of this pot is looking so scraggly. I'll want to do something different with this if possible. These little tiered pots were a long time coming, but I think they're going to be pretty. I think they are still going to fill out when our cooler weather gets here, if they can just keep on making it. And you can tell they're beginning to bloom some too. So hopefully I will have my pink and yellow display of profusion zinnias. In this little pot, what do I do with this little pot? It looked so good, and now it's looking so scraggly, and honestly we'll have to see what it will do later on in the season, because when it gets nicer and cooler weather, this could shine again. It could totally take off and we could be oohing and ahhing over it. It's got such potential, but it looks so pathetic right now. I'll definitely want to take out part of this otherwise beautiful double petunia, but it's looking so scraggly. And then my little usually extremely beautiful blue Victorian salvia is just barely holding on in the heat, but you'll notice it has some of the white Gomphrena globe flower there in with it. Those two colors could be beautiful together. And then there's a purple globe flower on this side that still has time to shine. And this beautiful coleus, and it was beautiful, but it's not so beautiful right now. Let me see if I even got it in there where you can tell that this one here, it's just so faded out, and it was so bright and beautiful, but it just goes through a lot in that summer's heat, just like us gardeners do. I am getting so weary of it, and I've told you before, but it's just beginning to be at its hardest because of those dog days. But they'll be over. They will eventually be over, and we'll have some beauty again. I have to keep telling myself that, and it is true. And especially if we don't have a quick frost and then freeze out, if it will just stay for a while, the plants will love it, the garden will love it, the gardener will love it, and I hope you will love it. And all of this beauty and freshness, and then here we go to this, and these looked good in the spring. These are the widow's tears, and they just look so pretty when they bloom and are fresh and just that beautiful sharp color. But right now, of course, they're looking absolutely terrible. I probably need to divide it for one thing and give them another chance. I do like the idea of putting them in a pot so they don't just keep growing and becoming invasive, but I would love to find a way to keep them because they are just beautiful when they are just beautiful. And I think this little rose moss just simply needs some fresh soil and a good fresh start to look beautiful again. And while my little Russian sage in this pot is looking pretty faded right now, I may need to clip it off and let it try again, or it may just brighten up when the cooler weather gets here. That does happen. That cooler weather definitely brings out the color in our plants. And while not looking good at the moment, this little pot was beautiful earlier on. It would really be pretty if this red yarrow and the pretty bright zinnias would bloom together, but that's not usually the case. But sometimes this pretty bright red yarrow can stand alone. You can see kind of the color there beside the one that's faded, how pretty it was. And it can stand alone, and sometimes the zinnias can stand alone once the yarrow is kind of cut down a bit. So we'll see. It could still be pretty this fall. Whereas, of course, this one I showed you just earlier, this is not going to be pretty this fall unless it has some help. It's going to need to be trimmed. It's going to have some replacement plants. It's going to need some help. And please don't let me try to think that a pretty profusion or Magellan zinnia would look good in this pot, because it will at some point, but most of the points through the summer it's going to look like this. It would be prettier with a sedum in it, with this little pot right here. And I forgot to tell you, but I asked my husband to keep this little tree down. I'm quite sure that it was just a little seedling that came up from this tree, and I don't really want two of the same kind of tree. I mean, this one is great. It's a willow. I didn't really realize that whenever I purchased it, but it's a willow like our weeping willow, only it's not the weeping kind. It puts its leaves upward. And they are both pretty, but if I get another plant, I would like to, or another tree, I would like to have a different tree. But I'm certainly not opposed to having another tree because they do let the sun through and it gets filtered shade. And in Oklahoma's terrible heat, I'm not at all sure, but that everything in the whole garden needs filtered sun. And while August is probably the worst time to take a picture of your container gardens, it's also a good time to let you know that this is how they're going to look. You think how pretty they're going to look, and then in reality sometimes they're not going to look so good after they've gone through some summer heat. The question is, do we want to change it for just this period of time, or do we want to enjoy it through the first part of summer and then kind of let it do what it does in nature for the hot, terrible part of summer? But actually, a lot of the time what it does is die a little prematurely because of the weather. Do have a chance of rain Sunday, and right now there's just a tiny little overcast and cool. Well, there is a little bit of a breeze blowing, but I think to call it cool would be stretching it a long ways. This little pot was a beauty earlier, but it's not a beauty now. Will it have a chance to return for the cooler fall season? Maybe. It may. These little green with purple veining coleus could look pretty there. I don't know if any of my pretty petunias or double petunias will be able to survive. I don't know if this little, I think this is purple alyssum, but it may be the white, but I don't know if it will make it, although it's just the cooler weather and a little watering or rain can help a great deal. It could come out of it. If it doesn't, I might try to find some pretty purple petunias, some pretty purple petunias to match this purple veining. Could be pretty in this pot. I actually forgot that I have a pot right down here. There's nothing in this pot, and I need to probably just put some little sedum in that. That would be great. And I did put little sedum plants in these pots earlier on, and they look good. Not great. I don't know if anything looks great in this season other than the crepe myrtles, and they do look pretty great. This little pot was also looking good, but not so much anymore. And these little pots, while looking terrible, are actually looking good because this is their first year to have sedum in these two little pots. And I think they're going to put down their root and hopefully be able to come back even in these pots. And just in case they're not, I also did put one of them in the ground back here. And for our hot weather, I found that sedum actually works the best. Look at this little pot of it right here. It has buds on it fixing to burst out in pretty white bloom. And while I do want some of this tall verbena, it can be very pretty, but these will all go to seed, are going to seed right now actually. So I definitely need to get out here and trim some of this off because these are perennial They don't even need seed to come back. They will be back anyway. So I wouldn't mind having a few of these. I definitely want a few of these, but I don't want them to get so out of hand invasive. I saw a little plant out here and I determined, well, that's a weed. It looked like this. And you can see it's not a weed, it's a tassel flower. So I'm glad I didn't pull this one up. Please be sure to like and to subscribe to the channel.